right? What is the follow-up to 9/11 going to look like? I feel like this was the part that everybody was like, okay, how do we go from fucking Al Qaeda bombing us to destroying them? Because Americans were seething, right? They were foaming at the mouth to get the enemy, which makes sense. I 100% understand the fact why American civilians would be pissed in the moment. And I would be pissed too. I would probably, if this podcast existed in 2001 and I was this age, I would have been freaking mad. I would have probably been like, yeah, let's go get them. Let's go bomb people. Like, that was the American sentiment at the time. It was, let's just take bombs and start bombs away. But that's emotional. That's emotional. And that's the key, right? I feel like, and I'm going to talk about it again later. We elect our leaders in this country to have the cool head, to be cool customers when shit like this happens and the rest of the country is emotional and wants you to react in a certain way, right? And yeah, and I feel like that's what we elect leaders for, to be these kind of guiding lights in pressure situations. Did I feel like Bush did that? Well, I'm gonna get to that later. But let's talk about the follow up to 9/11. So 9/11 happens. Everyone's debating on what to do. The follow up to 9/11 is probably one of the worst things that could have happened. Okay. And initially it didn't start out that bad. I feel like Bush's original intention to go to Afghanistan was not bad. I feel like a lot of people would have done the same thing. I feel like that was a very bipartisan effort. And I feel like most of the country agrees, like, okay, like, you got to go and try to find this guy bin Laden. You got to go and try to find Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and all these terrorists that were responsible for the attack and tried to basically bring them to justice. I get that. 100% understand that. Okay. You go to Afghanistan. Okay, you end up there. You basically take over the country in a matter of like 4 months. You're the strongest military in the world. You spend 33% of your budget on the military. You should be able to do that. Okay, cool. So you take over, but then you realize, holy shit, we don't know what we're doing. We just took over the country, and we have bin Laden. We don't even have bin Laden. We don't have Khalid Sheikh Mohammed at this point. We literally have nothing. So we're basically effed. Is basically what the narrative is. Is like, we're quite essentially fucked. And you take over the country, you have no idea. And in this documentary I was watching on Netflix, I got the same vibe. There were generals that were talking, who were going to Afghanistan, who were in Afghanistan, who were, on the ground fighting. And they were saying the same thing. They were like, we went there, we took over, and we basically had no long-term objective in Afghanistan. It was basically, the objective was to get bin Laden, and it didn't happen. So what ended up happening was they take over the country and they corner bin Laden in these mountains called the Tora Bora Mountains. It's a mountain range in Afghanistan. Don't know exactly where it is. I don't think it's on the border towards Pakistan. I think it's more north. So they have him cornered, or more southwest, I want to say. I don't know what it is. But they have him cornered in this mountain range in the Tora Bora Mountains. The American troops do, right? And so basically, like, this is your opportunity to get it, right? This is your opportunity to just bring him dead or alive or whatever they wanted, and basically bring him to Guantanamo Bay. This is your chance, okay? And what did they do? The American government made a colossal mistake, and they didn't send their special ops guys, who are trained to handle these like heavy situations in which you're trying to capture terrorists. They don't bring their special ops guys. They're not bringing special ops guys. They send in like a couple of troops of Afghani soldiers who are guys who are barely trained. Okay, keep in mind, these are people from Afghanistan who the literacy rates in Afghanistan are poor. So what American soldiers had to do is they literally had to start from the ground up with these guys. They had to teach them how to count at like a first, second grade level before they could even teach them like basic like military training, because the literacy rates are low. So you're sending a couple of troops there to the Tora Bora Mountains you expect them to capture bin Laden, and you don't even send one special ops troop, or one troop of special ops guys from America, from the American military. You don't send one, when you have the most wanted man alive right there in your grasp. And they made the mistake. What did bin Laden do? He skirted. He left. And then became the biggest manhunt / chase for the next 10 years. You had him in Tora Bora back in I think it was 2002, 2003. And then, yeah, you had to chase him around for another 8 years. Like, What was that? Okay, fine. All right, you lose bin Laden, but you have this country of Afghanistan and you still hang out there. It's 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005. You're still there. What are you doing? Like, I don't understand. Like, and this is where Americans were like, okay, like we got the original intent of going to Afghanistan. We're trying to get these terrorists, and they got a few. They got a few. To their credit, they got Khalid Sheikh Mohammed with collaborating with the Pakistan intelligence agency, right? They captured him. They captured a few other kind of high level Al Qaeda guys, and they sent them to Guantanamo, which is a whole separate other story of what they did there. That's like violating every violation of the Geneva Convention. Um, so fantastic job, George W. Bush. But they, to their credit, they got a few guys. They still haven't gotten bin Laden. But years go by, and suddenly they're in Afghanistan, and you hear from these soldiers in these documentaries, and they're like, dude, we don't know what we're doing. We're literally like Taliban soldiers are like 15, 16, 17-year-old kids who are a little bit younger than these kids who are like, than these American military kids who are coming out from high school, flying out to Afghanistan, thinking in their head that they are getting justice for what happened on 9/11, when in reality, they get there and they're like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Okay. And that's not even the worst part. All right. Afghanistan is a whole debacle. You're there for far too long. They just left. I'm talking like 3 weeks ago, just left. And now you see what's happening there. Complete disaster. There's more. There's more. Iraq. Okay. We haven't even gotten to Iraq yet. So basically, at this point in the war in Afghanistan, they're basically realizing, like, okay, we're not going to get bin Laden. We don't know what's next. So around this time in 2000, around the time of 2003, there are reports, all air quotes, reports that start to come out about this guy by the name of al-Zarqawi. And al-Zarqawi is this dude who's in like the northwest corner of Iraq. He has like basically he's leading a hate group. A hate group. Yeah, that's what you call it. He's leading a hate group. But the thing is this hate group isn't getting a lot of traction, right? So there's not a lot of people that are like with him. He doesn't have enough power to the point where he's like, crazy, like, what's it called? Like he has like, he's not bin Laden at all. Like he's not even on the scope of Osama bin Laden. He's literally just, he's al-Zarqawi. Like he's just some guy, like some low level like threat. Okay, like if you had to rank all the threats, like Osama bin Laden is like a 10 out of 10, like must capture, must like bring to justice. Al-Zarqawi on the terrorist scale is like a 3. Okay, like he's not necessarily the biggest threat. So anyway, Dick Cheney and George W. Bush basically identified this guy in the northeast corner of Iraq or northwest corner of Iraq or something, and he's kind of just chilling. And he's not getting very much traction with his group. But also, there's a lot of oil in Iraq. And there's a lot of oil. And what is George W. Bush connected to in America? Is the oil industry. And so the gears and the gears start ticking, and they start to realize, holy crap, we could get a lot of money if we get into Iraq. We just need to find a reason to get into the Iraq war. So at this point, you're already looking like George W. Bush and Dick Cheney went into Iraq for war, went into Iraq for oil being one of the reasons, al-Zarqawi being another reason. But then, here's the kicker. Best reason of them all. Weapons of mass destruction. WMD. Where do I start? Oh my God. WMD. Weapons of mass destruction. Okay. Apparently, Saddam Hussein, who is the horrible dictator in Iraq, don't get me wrong, held all of these weapons of mass destruction, aka nuclear weapons. And George W. Bush basically rationalized to the American people that they had intelligence that there were several weapons of mass destruction sites all throughout the country, where Saddam Hussein was basically stockpiling nuclear weapons. And you can't have that in a terrorist's hands. You can't have that in Saddam's hands. So we have to go to war in Iraq. So basically they go invade Iraq. They cause this whole scene. And then they realize, oh shit, there's no weapons of mass destruction. But the thing is, I think the American government knew the whole time, according to several sources. They didn't really have intelligence that weapons of mass destruction existed. They kind of just like picked and chose their sources. So everything was a little suspect. Dude, they literally went into Iraq with trying to get weapons of mass destruction. They basically caused mass destruction in Iraq and then quickly realized, oh, yeah, there are no weapons of mass destruction here. And George W. Bush has to go on and be like, well, we thought there were weapons of mass destruction according to our intelligence, but there aren't. And it was like, dude, oh my God. Oh my God. Really? Really? Like, this is where we're at. Okay, like WMD apparently did not exist the whole time. I think Bush kind of admitted it. He didn't necessarily admit it. He lied. He said that they thought there were there, but I think further evidence has come out that weapons of mass destruction didn't exist to the extent, at least, of what America was saying. And then America went after al-Zarqawi after, the weapons of mass destruction reason didn't work. So they were like, all right, we got to hammer down al-Zarqawi. So they kept mentioning this name, al-Zarqawi, al-Zarqawi. And according to several journalist reports that I've read, and a lot of other things, I try to keep it balanced. I would give Bush his credit if he was like, yeah, al-Zarqawi wasn't that dangerous. He was basically, there are several journalists who have said that he was basically pointed as the terror boogeyman and the terror propaganda guy in Iraq. Like the Americans were propaganding, basically using al-Zarqawi as propaganda for terrorism in Iraq, when in reality, he was like a pretty low level threat. There were some journalists that went on record and basically said he was borderline, like not even that big a threat, and he was almost the equivalent of a drug dealer in terms of threat. I don't necessarily think that's true. I think maybe he was a little higher. He was making hateful statements. And eventually this guy, al-Zarqawi, was got so much national attention and worldwide attention because the American government was putting this guy on blast that he basically went into hiding, and he is credited for forming or being one of the original founders of the Islamic State, aka ISIS. So America created another problem. Well, was one of the reasons that one problem existed. And basically they went and created another one. They created another problem. And that's what the follow-up to 9/11 was that there was another issue that was created because of the American incompetence to a certain extent. And I'm not even trying to be angry at the American government. Like, I genuinely went into this episode and genuinely did a lot of research into thinking, okay, I want to keep this balanced, and I want to also want to crap on the American government because they did some stuff wrong that I already know. But I also want to look into this as objectively as possible and give Bush his credit where it's due. And I will give Bush his credit where it's due because his credit is at the beginning. I think his initial response at the beginning, 10 out of 10. He did good. Good job, George. But when this whole thing just kept unraveling, 01, 02, 03, the more years that went by, the more it just became utterly ridiculous. And the fact is, we can't put our Democratic politicians aside from this too, because Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton supported the Iraq War because they believed that the WMD was real. I don't know. I guess the intelligence was picked and chosen. There was a lot of weird political stuff that went on with the WMD stuff. And obviously, I think Bush and Cheney had their own intentions with trying to get WMD trying to get into Iraq because of the oil and the resources that they could, and the money that they could make. So yeah. But honestly, I'll tell you one of the takes that I've had from this whole thing. I had a teacher of mine tell me that all American presidents tried to do their best when it came to defending this country. And I believed him for a while, besides Donald Trump. He was talking about it. So he was mentioning basically everybody else. He was like, every American president tried their best. So you can't doubt them on that. And I believed him for a while. I said, okay, maybe that is true. Maybe American presidents really do try their best and they're putting their best foot forward. And I certainly think that most have. But there's a few. George Walker Bush, Donald J. Trump, Bill Clinton to a certain extent, like Reagan. There's a few that have definitely been Obama, even to a certain extent. There's a few of these guys have messed up, man. I'll tell you that. And I don't necessarily think that they're putting their best foot forward all the time, because I also think that when money comes, when money comes, a lot of things change. So that's what I'll say to that. I've lost a lot of faith in the American political system. I used to be someone who was a massive believer in it, but as time goes on and I feel like as I grow older, like, wow, this is they made so many glaring errors. Anyway, I'm gonna move on to my next.